Welcome to the Week 16 DFS edition of the Fantasy Football Brothers podcast. My name is Blake, and I'm here with my younger brother Carson as we discuss DFS players that we like this week. So let's jump right into it. Carson, tell us about Justin Herbert playing Houston on the road for 7,200.
Yeah, Justin Herbert, 7,200. I mean, I remember a few weeks ago, probably about that, right when we started the show, he was having a very inconsistent stretch where he'd go 45, 12, 15, 34, 13. But since then, he's had 5 straight weeks over at least 24 DFS fantasy points. And one of those was 38.3. So he has the ability to boom, and he's showing that he is starting to have a consistent floor. I think he became a Pro Bowl quarterback, so that's pretty cool too. Shows you how he's been doing that well this season. And then it's just a great matchup. The only concern with him is the Chargers not needing to throw the ball as much because the Texans rank 14th in passing yards allowed per game, so that's not even like an amazing matchup, but they rank 32nd in rushing yards allowed per game. So that's the only risk with him, but I expect the Chargers to really be in control in this game for him to definitely do what he needs to do and get a few passing touchdowns, and hopefully he can still get enough yards to get a 3-point bonus.
Yeah, I'm looking here at his game log, and it shows his fewest number of pass attempts was 31. That was in Week 14 against the Giants. Obviously, they haven't really played a team as bad as Houston this season, so anything could happen with that in terms of how much volume we see from him. But the most important thing with quarterbacks, it's not volume, it's efficiency. So you don't necessarily have to be scared off. If he gets 3 or 4 touchdowns quickly, then it won't really matter how many completions or attempts he has because you've already gotten the points, and then they can kind of coast from there.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably do what works. I mean, with Eckler, with how many receptions he gets, this is definitely a passing team. So, yeah, hopefully that can work out for him. I can transition myself into Matthew Stafford at 6,700. He didn't capitalize on his good matchup last week against the Seahawks, only had 16.5 DFS points. But before that, he had 3 straight 23.5 or higher DFS fantasy points, and this is a really good matchup. I mean, this Vikings defense has been very bad all season, and they rank 29th in passing yardage allowed per game. And you can pair him up nicely with Cooper Kupp, and we'll talk about him later. And I just think 6,700 is like a super cheap price for Matthew Stafford. He's been over 7,000 or higher like more than 5 times this season, so this is a discounted price, and I don't really understand why.
Yeah, I mean, he's $1,000 cheaper than his season peak right now. So, yeah, obviously a great price there. And we talked about it on the regular DFS or the regular season show of the podcast, saying that the Seattle game was very slow paced. I think that this game against Minnesota is going to be the exact opposite. Lots of scoring, lots of fast pace, throwing the ball a lot. So, yeah, you like Stafford there. I think it's a great option at 6,700.
All right, and if you want to punt at quarterback, let Blake take over. Minimum priced David Blough.
That's right. We're talking about the Detroit starting quarterback in the event that Jared Goff is unavailable. It seems to be trending that direction. And at $4,000 against the Atlanta Falcons defense, I mean, all you can do is go up, really.
Yeah.
The idea here is you're punting at quarterback. You're getting someone who is not playing a difficult defense, a team that has been playing some motivated football lately. And you do have a wide receiver that has emerged recently in Amon-Ra St. Brown. So you can pair those two guys up. You can even go super cheap and throw in Craig Reynolds maybe.
Yeah.
Or
you could definitely do a cheap stack with the Lions.
Definitely. And I don't really advise that because I think that you're saving so much at quarterback that you can spend up elsewhere.
Yeah.
But also Josh Reynolds at wide receiver, he is my thing is loading 4,600.
Wow.
And he has been a double-digit scorer in 3 of his last 4, so you like that. But yeah, the idea is that you spend it really low at quarterback, and then you stack up elsewhere. I've got a lineup that has multiple top dogs at wide receiver with Blough in there, so those are the options that you can create for yourself by doing that.
All right, I can move on and talk about Mattison, and Patterson, I guess. Alexander Mattison, 6,800. Dalvin Cook has been ruled out with COVID, and we've talked about Alexander Mattison multiple times on this podcast. He is just Dalvin Cook whenever he has the backfield to himself. So at 6,800, that's a really good price for him. That's probably the cheapest he's ever been priced. No, he's been cheaper.
Well, yeah, no, it's.
I just meant like when they expected him to be in the role of having the backfield to himself.
DraftKings tends to price up those backups in the event that the starter is unavailable, and we'll actually talk about some players that did not get that boost in price based on their starters' projections, if that makes sense. We'll clarify that later on.
Yeah, but go for Mattison. I mean, you're getting an elite running back for a price that is much cheaper than the very, very top guys.
Yeah.
Like Dalvin Cook, for example, 8,300. Alexander Mattison, I think, will do just as good as Dalvin Cook with Dalvin Cook not being there, and you're getting a much cheaper price because of that situation. I can move on to Cordell Patterson, 6,700. He's been disappointing lately. Hasn't really boomed since week 12, but we know that the talent is there, and he's facing the Lions defense, who allow a lot of rushing yards to running backs, if it's not the Cardinals, I guess. We saw, I think, Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon a few weeks ago both had 20-plus fantasy points, so I expect Cordell Patterson to get his fair share, and at 6,700, I mean, I think that's just a good price. I mean, I'm nervous because he's been mediocre as of late, but I mean, this is DFS. This is not regular fantasy, so I think you got to trust him at that price and expect him to pay off at that price. Do you agree?
Yeah, and the idea is going for big games, and we're trying to target players that are going to deliver on that.
All right. Do you want to talk about Robinson and Sanders, or I can talk about Sanders if you want to.
Yeah. Let's start with James Robinson, who is on the road to the Jets. We saw how he performed last week in Houston. He was a very popular player in DFS tournaments. I think he's going to be a very popular player again this week, just based on how the Jaguars' schedule is working out. In Houston, he had 17.8 DFS points. 18 carries, 75 yards, and a touchdown, 3 catches for 13 yards on 6 targets. It's just, Urban Meyer's out of the Jaguars coaching staff, and I think that means that James Robinson is getting his chance to kind of reclaim that role as the lead back. And that's a good opportunity. He's got a great matchup this week. I like him at 5,900.
Yeah, I really do too. He's coming off a game where he had tied for most touches, and this is not even close to his most expensive price. So I do think that's really good. I can talk about Miles Sanders briefly at 5,600. This is someone I would have never trusted earlier on the season. I wouldn't trust any Eagles earlier on the season, but we're about to talk about another Eagles player later on in the podcast. But Miles Sanders has back-to-back 100-plus rushing yard games, and I honestly think that says enough. And he's getting so much usage in Week 13 against the Jets. He had 24 carries for 120 rushing yards, and in Week 15 against Washington, he had 18 carries for 131 rushing yards. So and this matchup against the Giants, who ranked 26th in rushing yards allowed per game, doesn't scare you. So I think at 5,600, he's hot right now with his rushing, and he got 2 receptions in Week 15 and 3 in Week 13. He's just getting a lot of touches, so I think he's a good pick right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things about Sanders. He's got there's a few things you can list off. 1, he's playing at home against a not very good defense. 2, he's getting 20-plus touches at the running back position. 3, he is under $6,000. I mean, there's a lot to like here.
Yeah. All right, I'll let you talk about Justin Jackson at 4,200 and Ronald Jones at 5,100. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with Ronald Jones. I'll switch it up on you.
Yeah.
Just because we're going in descending order. But so this is an example of a player that was not priced up preemptively in the event that Leonard Fournette would be missing. So you're getting a huge discount at a starting running back who, like we've seen last season, is a top 10 running back when given the workload. So the matchup is not great. Carolina is kind of tough. They're middle of the road against the run, but very difficult to pass against, and kind of middle of the road in points allowed. But the point is, Ronald Jones, we've seen him be a proven asset in this offense. They are going to rely on him in a considerable manner. He's not really going to be competing with anyone else for running back touches, presumably. and at 5,100, it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah, I agree. We can move on to wide receivers.
Oh, real quick.
Justin Jackson.
Don't leave him out yet.
Yeah, don't forget about him.
Yeah, 4,200 for Justin Jackson. So this is in response to the news that Austin Eckler has been placed on the COVID list as well. Justin Jackson, $4,200. He's playing Houston. We just talked about what James Robinson was able to do against them last week. Now, I don't expect quite that level of success for Jackson necessarily. He's likely going to have some competition with, what is his name? Something Kelly.
Joshua, I think.
Yeah, it's Josh Kelly.
Yeah.
It will be somewhat of a committee, but what we saw last week when Eckler was healthy was Jackson actually outcarried him 13-12. So he's going to get low to mid teen carries, a few catches sprinkled in there, I would assume. I mean, he's had at least one in his past 3 games, so a little bit of PPR upside, not a lot, but at 4,200, it kind of goes along the same lines of David Blough. You're spending very low at running back in order to pay up elsewhere.
All right. I'll talk about Cooper Kupp briefly, just because it's kind of self-explanatory. 9,100, very expensive, but stacking him with Stafford, and I already did a little bit of analysis against the Vikings defense. Apparently they rank last against wide receivers, just a very bad defense this season. Cooper Kupp's on pace to break the single season receiving yard record, and I think that says enough for how he's performing this year. Never has had single digits. Used to be able to say that about Deontay, but can't say that anymore. And I mean, he's had three straight games with 100+ receiving yards and at least one receiving touchdown. So
yeah, you have to find a way to squeeze him into your lineup, really, because he's just delivering week after week, and he's on incredible pace. It's exciting to watch.
All right, you want to talk about Justin Jefferson at 8,100?
Yeah, on the other side of this matchup, like we've said before, when talking about Matt Stafford, we expect this game to be high action, fast paced. Justin Jefferson is the clear number 1 in Minnesota. We've seen him be used heavily, very consistently this season, and he is $1,000 cheaper than Cooper Kupp. If you are able to have either one of these guys in this matchup, I think they will do well for you, just based on their usage and how the game flow will likely happen.
You want to talk about T. Higgins too?
Yeah, so T. Higgins, we didn't talk about Joe Burrow, but in this matchup, Baltimore is very not good against the pass. They rank 31st in passing yards allowed per game. You feel better about T. Higgins than Jamar Chase at this point in the season, I think, because Jamar Chase had such a hot start, but he's kind of regressed, and T. Higgins has been a much more consistent wide receiver 1 in that offense. If you ignore Week 15, where a lot of players, granted, did very poorly. His other weeks in these last 4 games, in Week 14, 19.4 fantasy points. Week 13, 31.8, and Week 12, 26.4. So at 6,200 and a good matchup, playing at home, you like T. Higgins.
He's 900 cheaper than Jamar Chase. I can move on. I'll lump together Marquise Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Marquise Brown's 5,800. I mean, this is someone who has been priced he was priced 6,900 in Week 12, and he's just kind of regressed a bit. He's been below his season-long average in fantasy points for a while, but he's coming off a game where he had his most receptions this season and tied for most targets. 10 receptions on 14 targets. It only amounted to 43 yards, but what I really like about Marquise Brown, what I really like about wide receivers as I talk about him, is I like that he's getting the volume, and also he usually is the type of wide receiver archetype that is just getting big plays. So the fact that he's getting that volume and he has that big play potential, I just expect him to be able to boom. It's hard for me to bet against him at that price, and that's really how I feel about him.
I'll say this. We do expect, we can look back at Week 7 when Baltimore played Cincinnati. He had 19 fantasy points, 5 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown.
On 14 targets, wow.
Yeah, 14 targets there as well. So, and that's a very inefficient day. I wonder if, was that the week where he had a couple drops? I remember he had a couple bad drops earlier this year, but there has been a bit of a quarterback, not necessarily carousel, but between Huntley and Jackson of who's going to start. I think either way you feel good based on how he was used when Huntley was there, and we've seen how he's performed with Jackson there. So
I mean, it's just hard to get a player at this price, 5,800, who has had like 36.5 fantasy points this season. Like, that's an extremely high ceiling, so that's what I really like about him. I can talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown. Talked about him last week. That really worked out, but we didn't get to upload that video. Now I'm saying that because of all the postponed games. But I did call it. Amon-Ra St. Brown had another great week. He had 23.5 fantasy points, helped out my team a lot. His past 3 weeks, he's had 24.8, 15.3, and 23.5 fantasy points. He just really emerged in this offense. He's had 26 receptions in that time and on 35 targets. I think that says enough. And two touchdowns. Regardless of Jared Goff or David Blough's there, I really don't think it's Goff's doing that's allowing St. Brown to emerge like this. I think it's St. Brown just getting integrated in the offense. So I'm not really worried about the quarterback, and I think at 5,600 against Atlanta's defense, I think he has an opportunity to do very, very well again. That's what I like about him. You want to talk about probably a lot of people choosing him. Antonio Brown at 4,900.
Yeah, he's going to be extremely popular as well, probably along with Ronald Jones. The issue here, Chris Godwin, we already know, is going to be inactive. Mike Evans is up in the air at the time of recording this podcast, so his availability is still in question. But the reality is, when Antonio Brown has been healthy, he's been one of Tom Brady's favorite targets. They have that relationship outside of the game of football that I think that it shows when they play on the field together.
I mean, he's averaging 20 fantasy points this season. A small sample size, albeit.
Small sample size, but he has 4 touchdowns in, 5 games played.
Wow.
So 29 catches, 418 yards.
Jeez. So
he gets used quite a bit when he's healthy and available.
And those were games with at least one of Evans and Godwin, if not both.
Correct. Yeah. So it's a big role for him to step into. They have a history of Brady likes to throw to him, and the matchup. I mean, Tampa Bay is going to continue to throw. That's their offense.
Yeah.
So
I don't expect them to get shut out again.
No, not at all. So 4,900, it's really hard to go away from that kind of usage.
Yeah. All right, we can move on to tight ends. Mark Andrews, 7,000. Another player that really helped me out in my lineup. He's got back-to-back weeks with 30-plus DFS points, 31.5 and 38.6. And back-to-back games with double-digit receptions. Back-to-back games with receiving touchdowns. I mean, he's just on fire. I think he's gone a little bit under the radar because of George Kittle, because we've been talking about him lately. But week 14, Mark Andrews at 31.5, as I said, and then he did even better than Kittle last week, and he's priced cheaper than Kittle's not in this contest. But Mark Andrews on fire, and same reasoning I've talked about with Marquise Brown. The volume is there, and Andrews is on fire. There's not much to say. 7,000, you need to get him if you can. I'm not going to say he's Cooper Kupp, but he's playing insanely well at the position, and I want to find a way to get him in my lineup if I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Rob Gronkowski, another one of Brady's favorites. And it kind of goes along the same analysis with Antonio Brown. When Gronkowski, and he has a much larger sample size relative to Brown, but Gronk gets used quite a bit when he is healthy and available. At $6,200, he's got boom potential, and I think he's going to be used quite a bit. Last week, he was targeted 11 times, only delivered on 2 of those. That was really just a poor performance by the Buccaneers. You don't expect that in back-to-back weeks.
Yep. I'll talk about Dallas Goedert at 5,100. Similar analysis to Miles Sanders. Goedert's in back-to-back games with 100-plus receiving yards, and he had 2 touchdowns in week 13 that allowed him to really boom. And then in week 15, he had 23.5 points with no touchdowns. I mean, at 5,100, that's really hard to pass up on when you can get a tight end to have that kind of performance without even being touchdown dependent. So I really like him. Not a very tough matchup at all. I think you trust him, and he's definitely not priced as high as he should be after that performance because of prices being made before that Tuesday game. So take advantage of that price. I expect him to go up significantly next week if he has another big week. So cash in when you can. So I guess you want to wrap it up and talk about Cole Kmet and Brevin Jordan?
Yeah, let's talk about a few cheap guys at tight end. So Cole Kmet, 3,300, playing on the road against Seattle. Good matchup. And here are his targets for the last 4 weeks: 9, 5, 7, and 11. So he's getting looked at by Justin Fields. Justin Fields is starting to get higher yardage totals in the passing game, which you like to see from him developing as a quarterback, a young quarterback. And yeah, Kmet, a couple games with 3 catches. That's not great, but he has had 6 and 8 catches in that span as well. So the real troubling part about Kmet, besides low catches, and these is tight ends we're talking about, so that's kind of a given. But unless you're talking about the top end guys, but Cole Kmet has not scored a touchdown in over a year.
Wow.
So that's a bit troubling. But hey, I mean, there's nothing saying that this week can't be the one at 3,300. That would really change how he affects your team total. So. Roll with him at 3,300. I don't think that's a bad option. And then all the way down at the position minimum,
your boy,
Brevin Jordan, 2,500. I'm gonna have to type in his name here to pull up this stuff.
I can't find him either
because there's a lot of people at 2,500. Here's the thing: last week he did not practice at all, had a hand injury. If he plays this week, you really like the matchup. They're going to be behind the Chargers. $2,500. He has had 3 touchdowns in how many games played? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
6. Yeah.
So scores a touchdown in half of his games. You like those odds, and they're going to have to throw. So you're punting at the position. I've been kind of advocating for the cheap guys all podcast long, but there's reason for it.
It's hard to get any touchdown upside at minimum tight end price. So,
but he has it.
Yeah,
he
does. All right, I guess we can wrap it up there. Thank you all so much for listening. Enjoy your Christmas and hopefully win some money in DFS.
Yeah, good luck in your games.
Peace out, everybody.